Jeff, amid all these discussions, economic discussions, where's the space of the local person?
The local mwananchi right now, especially when it comes to matters economics, has no voice.
At what point does paying the taxes cease to be a civic duty?
When the state uses those exact taxes to buy weapons that will be used against you, suppress you, fund cartels, fund goons, then the moral basis for tax compliance actually collapses.
How do the citizens gain their liberty and their space using the same constitution, given that currently they're pressed?
They have only been left with one choice, is to make a very critical decision come August 2027 to elect a government that is of the people, by the people, a government that is ready to listen.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to the Majority Podcast here on The Elephant. And today we shift our focus to a discussion of some of the key factors that are shaping the public discussions today, more so among the young people. And looking back at the history back in 2024, Kenya happened to witness a political shift whereby we had the young people marching to their streets in demand of better accountability, better representation, and everything that demanded to put the country in shape. And happening to look at everything that has happened before, the rottenness within the government continues. And shifting our focus to the corridors of power, today we ask, why is it that despite the monumental political awakening, the independent bodies, the justice system continues to be under impunity? And joining me for this discussion today is Jeff Mburu. And Jeff is someone who well understands systems of governance and more so, well equipped with the discussion. Karibu sana, Jeff.
Thank you very much, my brother. Sante sana.
Karibu sana. Jeff, happening to give it a start, we look at back at the year 2010. Kenya happened to give birth to the constitution. And looking at it, it was a promising document, more so to improve the shape of the systems of the country. But where we sit, we are still struggling with the achievements of some of the factors.
True.
And you happen to look at section 1, chapter 1, which talks about which awards power to the systems of governance, and even chapter 2, which tends to give power to the people. But we are struggling with it. Where is this issue?
Well, thank you very much, Yusuf, for having me here. My name is Jeff. And as a Kenyan, I tend to go and abide to the words of our national anthem, that let justice be our shield and defender. The justice enshrined in our constitution, the 2010 constitution, is the one that we choose to abide to. And let us always call out injustice when it is happening. It takes you and I to call out injustice for justice to be found. To your question, one of the most monumental achievements for us as a country is the 2010 constitution. But unfortunately, the 2010 constitution promised to give us a better Kenya, the Kenya that so many people and many generations had died for. But we found ourselves in a phenomenon called hyperlegalism without constitutionalism. That yes, we have a constitution, but for who? The keys of that constitution were left with a generation or a people who are very political gluttons. That the constitution only functions if it actually favors them. And that is why we find ourselves that the constitution is abused, the constitution is neglected, is disobeyed, not unless it is favoring those that are in authority. That is what we call the weaponization of the statutory law. And we find ourselves bypassing constitution if it is not favoring us, as I've insisted. And that is why we find ourselves that we are always in parliament amending and coming up with new laws that favor those that are in power. But again, what the constitution has asked us, to try and follow, respect of human rights, justice, that one don't want to obey because it is not favoring those that are in power. In fact, we tend to come up with new laws That is why you've always seen anytime we have, such incidents like what we had in 2024, we now need to come up with a new committee. The constitution is very clear. The right to life is enshrined in that constitution, in the Bill of Rights. So if you disrespect that, you're supposed to be answerable to it in a court of law. But now because it is not favoring those that are in power, what do? They come up with a compensation framework. The constitution has also been abused because it comes up with what I call the elite pacts and the co-option of dissent. As I've said, we are a very political country, which is good and bad in a way. 2008, after what we saw after the general election, the post-election violence, we came up with something that was called the coalition government, the handshake, the Kibaki-Raila handshake, the mkate nusu. But it was good for that time. But it created a very bad precedence that the human rights of Kenyans can be abused. And in one morning, somewhere in front of Harambee House, people shake hands in front of cameras, and we forget about that. 2017, we lost close to 60, 70 lives after the election dispute, after the 2017 election dispute. We had even children, remember baby Pendo,
Yes.
that lost their lives. What happened? People appeared on a morning at a Harambee House, shook hands, and we tend to forget all that thing. 2023, we had the Sufuria Maandamano. People lost their lives, a lot of them. What did we see? A handshake, the broad-based government. So that has created a very bad precedence that human rights can always be abused, and political agreements, and how much the labeling that they always give them.
Yeah.
That it is now for, what is the name? Nationalism. It is national cooperation. It is now broad-based. It is now BBI was what? Building bridges. Now we build bridges us as leaders, but what does a Kenyan benefit from? Something else that was introduced in this constitution was devolution. There was a very good, aspect that our forefathers, those that were there at independence, they had seen that the president does not need to come to your constituency, to your ward, and say, build this road, build that school, fund this water or electricity project. And they said, let us devolve the government. In the development, the Kenyans can actually access developments right there at their counties. That you don't have to travel from Bungoma, Wajir, Murang'a, or wherever to come to Nairobi to get your development. But what happened? Instead of actualizing devolution, what we actually got, we devolved corruption, we devolved abuse. That is why corruption is now even bigger. Because now what we had, one big problem as corruption, it divided itself like a cell, like a cancer cell, into 47 others. That is why you saw people are building latrines of 500,000. So we have never actualized this constitution because of those who are actually in power. And as I said, as we are starting, of that phenomenon called as a hyperlegalism without constitutionalism, where Kenya successfully engineered an advanced progressive democratic architecture, but left the keys in the hands of unchanged political class.
Yeah. Jeff, looking at chapter 2, it tends to give to provide with us the values and principles of good governance.
True.
And happening to look, we've had the Senate that has been calling and grilling the governors to given counties over trying to give the expenditures, trying to identify where their loopholes are. But it has been something that has been done repeatedly, but we tend to go back to the same. Nothing is being done. So is this oversight just there to blind the eyes of the public?
There is oversight, the function, and there is oversight, the name, for the optics. What is oversight? That is what we need to ask ourselves. Is calling you to be accountable. We give you 1 billion shillings. You, show us what you did. You built a toilet, you built a school, you constructed a road. Was it worth it? If a single kilometer should cost us X amount, why did yours cost X plus 200 million? Why did it cost you X plus, such amount, such a sum of money? Then, if there is a shilling that remained or a shilling that is not accounted for, you are corrupt. Yeah. You mismanaged public funds. What does the Constitution say about people who mismanage public funds? You are supposed to be accountable in a court of law that should find you unfit for public office. And therefore, you should exit office, number one, if that court has jailed you for more than 6 months, or if you are removed from office through a process of impeachment. The most entertaining show in Kenya is a reality show in the chambers of the Senate, where governors are cross-examined by very serious senators. Let me say serious, because they're only serious in front of the cameras. They ask the governors, and we tend to see the misappropriation that we have, in our counties. Funny enough, we saw people buying a TV screen for 1 million shillings. Just yesterday, people were building a latrine for 500,000 Kenya shillings. We've seen people budgeting for money. They went to, I don't know, they had a feeding program for wild animals, I don't know,
Gazebos for 300.
Yes, gazebos for yes. And all those things. That is misappropriation, sindio?
Yes.
But does that oversight committee follow the due process of prosecuting those criminals? Because the moment that you tell us that you used 1 million Kenya shillings buying a television, you have misappropriated the public funds. What's supposed to be done to you? Does the process follow after, sitting in that committee? Ama it is just one actor after another actor, one actor after another actor? It doesn't. And therefore the Senate is doing, half the work, and the half of the work that, tends to be, sorry to say, a little bit, much of it being useless.
Yeah.
Because the moment you've questioned this and you've brought him, to the limelight, and everybody's like, yeah, but he's our thief. And when we try to follow, the due process of now impeaching people, they're like, okay, it is because of his political stand. It is because he comes from this tribe.
Yeah.
And so we tend to politicize everything. Who gets to benefit? It is them. Will mwananchi ever benefit from the political, stances that get to happen? They don't. So maumivu inaenda kwa mwananchi.
Okay, going to this, happening to look at the events, 2024 is something that was backed heavily by the heavy taxes that had been proposed in the 2024 finance bill. Good luck, or to some extent, it's something that was withdrawn, but life continued to be that heavy.
Yes.
And so looking at it, we happen to be experiencing a democratic stagnation, whereby the Kenya sovereignty itself is being outsourced to external economic factors. And I happen to ask, who is it that is benefiting from all this stagnation that we happen to be experiencing?
Well, definitely it is not mwananchi. And you see, the problem with us is that the moment you live in debt, they said that the person who feeds you is the one who calls the shot, right?
Yeah.
If I feed you today and they tell you jump, you ask me, how high? I believe the government is not all that inhuman to say, let us tax these people and see them suffer. The problem is, we went and borrowed money, and we have somebody who gives us money that is called the International Monetary Fund, IMF. IMF gives you money. But because we are at a very huge risk when it comes to debts, they're the one who, they have to ask how are you guys going to repay this money. And that they now have to tell the government, by the way, you guys need to tax your people and this such amount of money because we need to recover our money.
Yes.
Where a country, right now we are talking about 12 trillion
yes.
in terms of debt. And so when you see the fuel levy, we've gotten to a point that the security of the loans that we are taking is in the taxes that we are not paying, but the ones that we are going to pay. That is why in the fuel levy, you will find there is a loan that we have taken with. Right now, when the country is complaining about, bring subsidies and the high cost of fuel, the government cannot lower the cost of fuel because it is not that it is very inhuman. Yeah. It is because there is a big boy over there that is calling the shots and is like, you guys took this amount of money and that needs to be repaid, or you need to give us an assurance that next for us to give you a loan next year, you must have collected this amount of money. And we have seen the IMF influence when it comes to making our budget, when it comes to taxing Kenyans. And I think it is one of the biggest cancers eating eating us up. So the outsourcing of physical sovereignty has actually injured us as Kenyans. Then we also have local beneficiaries. So the international beneficiaries is actually the people that we owe internationally. Then we also have the local beneficiaries that are the banks. Remember, the country is now at risk that we don't even get the amount that we target from the money that we outsource out there. We also have the banks that, you know, give the government loans in terms of bonds. And the banks need to give to make their profits.
Yes.
So if the bank is loaning the government, who needs the other more? It is the government that needs the bank, right? Because it's the banks that are giving government money. And so the banks, because their business model is making profit, they're not there just because, you know, they have pity or have mercy on the government. No, they call the shots and they're like, our interest rates will be double digits. That is why Kenyans, again, when they go to get loans from the bank, they tend to suffer 14 up to 18%. And that is why you are seeing today, if you purchase a newspaper over there, there are like 4 or 5 pages dedicated to auctioneers, because the rates, you know, the interest rates are very high. And they are being high on top of more taxation. That is like a punishment. And therefore Kenyans cannot sustain themselves. People who were living paycheck to paycheck are now living hand to mouth. In fact, it has gotten to a point in this country where people who are employed are suffering more than those who are not employed. Right now, we are like 2 weeks to when people are going to get paid. But I'm sure somebody can tell you, the moment they receive their paycheck like this, they now want to wait for the paycheck of the other month. Because imechukuliwa na taxes, imechukuliwa na madeni and loans.
Okay, Jeff, amid all these discussions, economic discussions, the presentations within the parliament and the decisions being made by the representative, where's the space of the local person, of the mwananchi? Let me put it so.
The local mwananchi right now, especially when it comes to matters economics, has no voice.
And given, as you respond to that, putting in mind that we are under a regime that was promising so much of liberty to boda boda, the mwananchi, and the language used was mama mboga and the boda boda.
Mwananchi wa chini, bottom up. I think Kenyans have now seen what bottom up actually is. It is not for you to be brought from the bottom up. It is for you to be now put upside down and ensure that everything that you had, kuisha yote. Kenyans do not have a voice when it comes to, in fact, it has gotten to a point that Kenyans don't have a voice even to decision making. The other day we had, people saying that we need to be consulted for you to bring a facility, a deadly disease facility in Kenya. And what did the cabinet secretary tell us? You don't have a voice, we don't need to consult you. That is what we saw when it came to the finance bill 2026. Why you consulted? Did you see any public participation anywhere? There was no. The MPs were there, and in fact, were it not for some 2 good MPs who decided to stand with the people, that thing could have been passed as it was. Because, as I've said, remember, we are also listening to people who are feeding us. And when they say that you guys need to collect X amount in terms of taxes from your imports, from your fuel, from the digital, what do you call this? The digital economy. I was just to say, yes, sir. So to answer your question, Yusuf, mwananchi does not have a voice. Right now, we are relying on people to fund us as a country because the people that are in power do not have the reasoning of, trying to budget the little that we have and sending it back to develop. We have spendthrifts that are in government. That is why you're seeing people try, flying aeroplanes of $1 million an hour. Anyway, they are collecting some taxes. But the sense that, people are going through a lot of pain for them to contribute this tax. Let us try to at least reduce something to them, trying to cushion the economy that is very hard for them, looking at what is happening internally and, the other global factors. And Kenyans tell them every day. But what happens? When you come tell a person, man, you're overspending, you're traveling a lot, the cost of fuel is too much, you're killed. That says the Kenyan does not have a voice.
And happening to link that one to the first question whereby we started by asking, we have a constitution. How do the citizens gain their liberty and their space using the same constitution, given that currently they're pressed?
Very good question, and I believe a question that every Kenyan understands. that their liberty is enshrined in the Constitution, in their right to picket, in their right to demonstrate, in their right to strike. And they have tried that. But unfortunately, what we have seen, the treatment that we have seen, Kenyans being treated as criminals, Kenyans, being shot at indiscriminately during the day, in front of cameras. Sometimes you used to hear people have been killed. We never used to see what has been happening. But right now, in front of cameras, you're seeing people being killed innocently. The fact that you're just in the streets, you're being shot at. Tells Kenyans that somebody says, risasi imebakia ngapi? Moja. They have only been left with one choice. Is to make a very critical decision come August 2027 to elect a government that is of the people, by the people. A government that is ready to listen. A government that does not find pleasure in extravagance, what they wear, their accessory, their watches, their whatever. But a government that feels the normal mwananchi in whatever county, despite their religion, despite their tribe, despite their tribal affiliation, it is a government of the people. That is what this country needs.
Okay, Jeff, moving into this, happening to look at the role of IPOA, and I'm asking that because lately we've been having so much of unrest.
Yes.
And with every unrest that we've been having, lives have been always lost, people are getting injured. And IPOA serves basically to monitor and also investigate the operations affecting the police and the people. And they serve purposely to give recommendations of accountability and professionalism. But all along, happening to look at it, we've been having the police in demonstrations, ill prepared. They're wearing, some are coming in there with unmarked vehicles.
Yes.
What does this mean for the people?
Well, I can say, you were talking about the loophole in IPOA. I can tell you, number one, that the loophole is nowhere accidental. It is very strategic, and it is an intentional and a structural layout, to try to cover up for the National Police Service, because there are people who outrightly know that they are abusing human rights.
Yeah.
Number one, there is the evidentiary wall of identity obfuscation. Plainclothes, people who are masked. You remember the masked guy? He was killed by a police officer that had used a headscarf to cover his face. Why it's not for Kenyans who actually knew the officer's social media accounts and they were able to identify him. The unmarked vehicles is that because the people know that they're going to abuse human rights, but there'll be nobody to blame because we saw vehicles, we saw people, but they were unmasked. Allow me to refer to some notes here. That, during those operations against public order, remember that live bullets are actually the last option of trying to restore order. You can use tear gas, you can use the water cannons. Actually, the other day I came to realize that there is something that you can actually use against a protester and they get unconscious without harming them. Then you can arrest them or maybe take them to hospital or take them to a place where, they're not causing any fracas, if indeed they were causing this. But IPOA, IPOA actually relies on police for investigation. Remember, IPOA does not have the Forensics Investigation Bureau. IPOA is just a committee of a few people who sit there and they listen to you. Then they give recommendation to either the judicial, to the head of
police
and public prosecution. But their investigations rely on who? On the police. So how can IPOA use police to investigate the same police who are abusing human rights? Yeah.
And okay, given that we have these bodies, IPOA is there, but it's not serving its purpose. Personally, I feel it's not serving its purpose because looking at all those events and they've affected people, we are still waiting for an answer and we are still looking up to them to be handed their justice.
Yes.
But it's not being handed. Then why do we have the bodies?
Well, as I told you, these bodies have just been placed there for the optics, to look like we are doing something. But definitely we know that we are doing nothing. I can refer you to not one, not two, 3 cases that have been, lagging themselves in court. We have a case of Baby Pendo, a kid that was killed almost 10 years ago. Has justice ever been served? No. Recently, we had the case of Masai who was killed during the 2024 protest. We also, the officer that shot him, we all are seeing the suspect in court. And despite you not being, that of a forensic profession, you can put 99.9% resemblance on the person who shot Masai and the person who is standing in court. But again, the institutions, and there are so many and so long processes, are just an obstruction of justice. They are there again because as I started this conversation, I told you, it is not by mistake that it is happening. It has been put there for a purpose, to delay justice. And justice delayed is justice denied.
And Jeff, does this mean that lethal violence has been turned to be used as something for political survival?
Yes. Right now, violence, inhumanity, is actually now being used, yes, for political survival, as you put it. It was by police officers. It went to unclothed, unidentified police officers. And now, what are we seeing? Militia now being used in terms of goons. We have seen in not one or two videos where goons in the company of police officers, because of political gluttony, attack churches, attack institutions. The other day we saw an innocent bus ferrying students from music festivals being attacked. It poses a great risk to our children, because attacking our children, remember what we saw with the children from Butere girls?
Yes.
When you go, attacking people in churches, where they are old people, where they are children, just because the person who has organized, that event is your political foe. But remember, these politicians themselves, they sit together, they laugh at each other. There is no single day that a politician has ever been harmed by goons or by injustice by police. Because remember, these goons are actually working when in broad daylight, in the watch of police officers. The people who end up getting harmed are normal mwananchi. Yesterday we had a very bad case in Kuresoi, somewhere in Nakuru County, because the governor and the local MP are not in terms. But the MP cannot go and attack the governor in her house or in her office. He goes to attack her when she is in a public forum. Yes. The people who get hurt are actually the people who don't have anything, don't know even whatever is happening because between the governor and the MP. They're just people who are poor, the people who have actually been, robbed by the regime. And they're there because somebody promised them, at the end of the day, by attending this meeting, you're going to get 200, 500, 1,000 shillings. And you come out of that place with permanent injuries. Very sad.
And talking about the goonism in the country, and it seems like it's a culture that we've fully adopted.
True.
And now we are talking of goon culture. And we are walking into 2027, a political year, where we are going to do our elections. And looking at the political temperatures, daily things are cooking. Things are taking another shift. What does this mean for the people? Because I believe the political class sits on a different level with the people. And the people being used as goons, they're the same people. What does this mean for the citizens?
There is a tweet that goes around of a lady who once said, I don't remember the exact words, but she said that one day people will sit and look at the ruins of Kenya and say over there they lied a country. Haiti, where our police officers were sent to maintain law and order, try to restore law and order, did not just wake up one day and find themselves a disorderly nation. Sudan, where there is the RSF and the Sudan Defense Forces and everything, they did not wake up one day and find themselves. In fact, Sudan, if you get to read the history of the modern man, it was one of the richest places ever.
Yes.
They did not wake up and find themselves a disorderly nation. The violence that in Congo did not reign or just did not come, from sun rays. It was because of this militia. What happens when police or when politicians use citizens against themselves, equip them with machetes, with clovers, with all those weapons, name them. and use them against the citizens. It starts with one politician. It starts with a second politician. Tomorrow they'll not give them machetes. They will give them guns. We were there during the Mungeke regime around between 2006 and 2009, somewhere there. And we saw the kind of obstructions that militia brings to the country, the kind of painful deaths. People are killed in very ugly ways and are, left for the dead. We have instances of rape. We have children even being part of this militia.
Yes.
And the lawlessness and the time it has taken these countries to recover. I would not wish a day where Kenya looks like Haiti. I will not wish for a day where Kenya looks like Sudan or DRC. But the people who are supposed to ensure that there is law and order and that Kenya is heading to the right direction, in one way or another, are facilitating Kenya to head to that direction. Because if I am your buddy and you are the one who's deploying goons around Nairobi, I'm supposed to call you out, even if I'm not involved. But if I try, to help you go undercover, I'll be facilitating insecurity in this country. You saw what happens what happened to the goons who went to All Saints Cathedral.
Yes.
After they are done with All Saints Cathedral, what did they do? Anybody who was on Kenyatta Avenue walking, they were robbed of their possession. It is not one or two videos that we have seen. We are heading to a very politically, not very good season, and we have witnessed it, especially when we are talking about re-elections. We have two types of elections. We have the succession elections, which are normally calm, but looking at the succession elections, what we had in 2007, the worst, and I would not want to see a repeat of it in 2017. You remember we saw a lot of violence then. We are around 15 months to the next general elections. But somebody who will visit this country will say we have elections maybe the next 2 or 3 months.
2 months.
Because the political temperatures are very high.
Yeah.
Then, to put insult to the injury with all this gun violence, somebody decides to use, petrol or fuel to put off a fire and introduces the tribal card. So we've been living with you for eternity. Then I realize, oh my goodness. So this guy does not say we mwega. This guy, his tribe does not do such and such. So it is because of this guy's tribe that I am suffering, which is a lie. The person that we live with, the person that you use the matatu with, is a Kenyan like you. Why should it take a political season for you to be reminded that you are tribe X, and if tribe X is suffering because of tribe A or B? It is unfortunate. And so heading to the next general elections, it will call for a very, I would say right now we are already in the waters. And something needs to be stopped, not tomorrow, but today. Because if it is not, I am sorry and I would not wish to see a repeat of 2007.
Yeah. Jeff, happening to pick these, recently we heard one of the politicians make a sentiment which was kind of uncalled for. And it was saying that we don't want foreigners to come in Kenya and pick up jobs made for Kenyans. And looking at what is happening in South Africa, the unrest, the protests that are happening there, and we are having the deportations of the foreigners still in, it's an African country, but because you're not South African, they're being sent out. So what does that mean for Kenya?
The politician said that Kenyans should?
The foreigners should avoid, we are not going to condone foreigners coming in Kenya, picking up Kenyan jobs.
Number one, let me take the opportunity to condemn xenophobia that is happening in South Africa. Shamefully, that is actually happening in South Africa, a country that for over 3 decades dependent on Africa. Had the whole of Africa not stopped and united and said, hey, something is happening down south, the greatest injustices, genocides in this continent had already happened in South Africa. And it took Africa speaking in one voice to say, hey, stop what is happening in South Africa. South Africa should have been open to everybody because for one or other reasons, it happened to be the United States of Africa, where people are liberal, people are free to come together despite all their differences and work. And South Africa actually missed a very big opportunity, becoming a strong economy by allowing, differences and everything. And because of the injustices and actually cases of insecurity that we saw in South Africa are actually the ones that have led them to where they are. I will not say Kenya is also facing a similar situation. We are seeing people from different parts of the globe or of the continent coming to our country. But again, I would not want to agree with what the politicians said, but my sentiments will be kind of close to what they said. Why is it that we allow people to come and work in this country? Our roads have been constructed by the Chinese. And to say the truth, they did something that we could not have said. We have people in offices doing things that, Kenyans maybe don't have the capacity to do. But the moment you are dealing with a jobless population and you are importing capacity from neighboring countries to come and do the minimal jobs that these people are supposed to be doing, speaks a lot about you. We have car washes, we have vinyozi, we have people who hawk around, food items and any other things. Why should people come from other countries to do it in our country? But the fact that they're here, number one, are they here legally? If they're here legally, yes, then they should enjoy what every Kenyan actually should be, including doing businesses and working. And there is no law that prohibits anybody from working in Kenya, the fact that they are here legally.
Yes.
But what is the end game? Are we bringing people to give them citizenship? I live somewhere, then you bring somebody. In 6 months, they ask me to send them money in their phone numbers. Their phone numbers is registered under their name. How do you get a SIM card? And you tell me that you already have an identity card. The identity card for foreigners in Kenya, the law in Kenya says that you should only get an identity card after you've lived in Kenya for how long? 7 years. Somebody came here in 2020. In 2 years, they have an ID. That speaks a lot about, as we had a case this week of auctioning our citizenship. What is the end game of us selling citizenship to foreigners and giving them the jobs? So if people are here,
yes,
and they're here legally, it is good to work with them. But again, let us not auction our citizenship because we want to misuse people from way poor countries by lying to them with small jobs here where they take home 300, 200 shillings at the end of the day for us to use them politically come next year. And so what will happen after August 2027? Will we put them in lorries and bundle them back home? No, they won't. You saw what happened in America. What ICE is doing is because they realize there's a very huge population of people who are there illegally. And now they start committing other crimes. People can commit crimes and run away home, back home. In this country, we've seen 2 or 3 instances of what that can happen by getting people to work as, house helps of from the neighboring countries. The moment you have them here illegally, we saw cases of, kidnapping of children, and the kids the cases tend to, be forgotten, and it becomes hard for the investigative authorities because of such instances. But working in Kenya and they're in the country legally, it is very good. Let us work together as a community.
Yeah. Jeff, happening to look at this, how has the executive managed to compromise the independence of the courts? And what happens to the social contract when the citizen's last line of defense is compromised?
Well, the executive subverts the judiciary, not through, shutdown, but calculated strategy. 3 that I love to mention. 1, physical strangulation, infiltration of the Judicial Service Commission, and the normalized disobedience of court orders. Physical strangulation, the judiciary does not make money by itself. It is an independent arm of government. But who feeds the judiciary? It is actually the executive itself, right? The fact that we see, because the judiciary actually does not want to be starved what it gets at every physical year, they have to do again as the master says. As I told you as we were starting this conversation, if I feed you and ask you to jump, you will ask how high.
Yes.
Case in point, this week we had the president say something very beautiful, that he's the president of all the 5 presidents that we've had as a country. He's the president who's appointed most judges. True. And that is very good for a judicial service. But again, Yusuf, if I come to your house and say, in this house, I am the guy who brings a lot of shopping, that says that anytime I come that house hungry, I want to find food, right? So the fact that the executive is the one that, is the one that is funding the judiciary, it will always get its way in the judiciary. We also have the infiltration of the Judicial Service Commission, the fact that the executive has an influence when it comes to appointing the JSC. It actually infiltrates that and infiltrates the JSC, and it gives the regime a direct say in the recruitment, promotion, discipline, and creating chilling effects in the bench. And unfortunately, there was a time we were having an aspirants meeting in State House. Very sad to see judicial officers sitting in State House in party-branded colors, because it is the executive that had an arm in the appointment to the Judicial Service Commission. And lastly, we have the normalized disobedience of court orders. People who fight for human rights, they always rush to courts whenever they feel that Kenyans are being oppressed by the government, by the executive, when the executive issues 1 or 2, 3 orders. But again, the executive has normalized that. Court orders for who? We have court orders that have, stopped construction of the airport. In fact, were it not for the government of America finding an international individual as highly corrupt, the construction of, the JKIA would have continued with all those many court orders having been stopped. We saw what happened in during the Ebola story that we were having the other day. Yes, the court stopped, but we still saw, as it was reported, there was construction and everything in that Ebola facility was happening. So by doing those 3, should Kenyans be assured of justice? No. Anasema mwandishi mmoja ya kwamba kuku atapataje haki ikiwa kunguru ndiye hakimu.
Jeff, happening to also look at these bills are being proposed, and at the moment we've had the 2026 finance bill that has been tabled before the parliament, and it has gone through the process, waiting for its final. And looking at it, Kenyans are legally forced to fund states that tend to brutalize them, and while corrupt elites go entirely unpunished. And when the government refuses to account for the blood that has been shed, at what point does paying the taxes cease to be a civic duty and become a mandatory financing of their own?
Yusuf, according to a classic governance theory, taxation is a conditional agreement that the citizens get to surrender a portion of their private wealth, and the state, in returns, guarantees their protection of life and basic human decency. That this guy lives in a decent place. This person eats decent food. This person works in a decent workplace, and all that assures you of human decency. But now, when the state uses those exact taxes to buy weapons that will be used against you, suppress you, fund cartels, fund goons, then the moral basis for tax compliance actually collapses. People now start feeling that they're not actually paying taxes, but they're actually being robbed. And that is why you will always find rebellion in such an instance.
Jeff, happening to moving to this, as we even move to our close, Kenya political class has been in a race. Like they're in a race to maintain their own power through corrupt means. And the machinery of the state has been turned into zones of personal appropriation. And the oversight institutions themselves are being hollowed out. And looking at this, it's less than 15 months, as we happen to mention, towards the next general election. What does this mean for the people, for the citizens?
Well, what should the people expect? I don't know if there is much for the people to expect than for them to anticipate and do. 2027 is a make or break for the people of Kenya. It is either they go there, number one, with the full realization of what is expected of them. That the people they are going to elect are the people who are going to serve them for the next 5 years. There is no breakover. There is no midterm to say that we are going to evaluate you. You've done this. Maybe it is your time to go home. No. It is between 2027 August and 2032 August. And they should learn from what, from the decisions they made in the 2022 general elections. But Kenyans, number one, should expect the engineering of an electoral theatre.
Yeah.
IEBC is an independent commission, but again, funded by who? By the executive. And so, are also appointed by the executive.
The executive.
Yusuf, I don't understand why I should give you a job, fund your office, and you should not expect me to come asking for favors from you, especially if I've done it, with the similar independent offices. Also, Kenya should expect the expansion of identity and ethnic balkanization, because when people tend not to have anything to offer, when people don't have results to show that this is what we did so that we can be elected, they tend to bring division. And it has happened in our country, not just in this regime, not just in the coming elections, sorry, even in previous elections. You are told, oh, you guys are suffering because some families took everything and now it is in their possession, and now we the hustlers need to take the government and make it for hustlers. Then they took it. Then now we were told, no, it's not about hustlers, it's about Singapore. And as you can see, people are now being told, it is now Tribe X that have been in power, and that is why this has been happening. And not just even on the government side, even on the other side, the opposition side, they're like, yeah, for us to remove these people, why don't they say people of the same opinion that we need the country to come together? Where are we being told, you Tribe B and Tribe C, we are like cousins. So cousins, we need to unite. So we are going to see that ethnic balkanization come up once again, knowing very clearly what it cost us 20 years ago. And my plea to Kenyans is that they should not buy that tribal card. That the moment somebody is getting to remind you that your brother, the person that you live next to, the person that you go to ask for chumvi or sukari or akufulizie, is from Tribe X, and now you want to turn, against them. It is not those days that you are being told, oh, it happened in Rwanda. No, it happened in this country. And we saw what, the result is that two people are going to get in power, they are going to rule, and they're going to come and tell us, now we need to do a healing, and I don't know, a restoration of order, whatever. But Mwananchi is the one who will have suffered. Then we are going to have also total apathy of, we should expect something that we should actually not, that is not actually that beautiful, apathy when it comes to voting, especially from the youth. And that is actually a political strategy by some of the quarters of our politicians. They want to bring vote apathy, especially amongst the youth. And by doing this is by telling people, tutaiba. Even if you guys vote, we are going to steal these votes. You know what that is meant for? To make people who actually wanted to go and vote to change their leaders not to vote, because anyway, si wataiba after all. My plea to Kenyans is that despite all those shenanigans, that one vote that you carries the hope, the future, and the direction of the Republic of Kenya for the next 5 years. If they are going to steal, let them steal when yours in the ballot box. But that one that you have put in the ballot box, don't vote somebody because he comes from your tribe. Don't vote for somebody because of the political wave, either the party or the coalition or anything. Vote for people who are going to bring some change in this country. We have done that for so long and it has not worked. 2027 is no difference. It is not going to work. Can we try something different? That you're going to elect people who can work at least for 5 years and see if that indeed works. Because the tribal na political waves na populism imekataa kabisa. Thank you very much, Joseph.
Jeff, that's a good way to end it. And we have a lot in store.
True.
But with the interest of time, I believe we'll have to end it here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.